So tonight, it is my pleasure, it is absolutely my pleasure to introduce to some of you and present to others Kinji Ridley. Kinji has done some similar kinds of things at our church and has done some things in the Bywood community. So would you please help me to welcome my good friend and my spiritual son, Kinji Ridley.
Good evening. Thank you, Pastor. I was joking with him earlier. I'm imitating. So everybody that's a member of the church will notice we're going to have a fireside chat. That's what I'm doing. I'm imitating my father on this one. So thank you for having me here this evening. A lot of times when people do these presentations, they're lecturing you, they're talking at you. I'm going to engage with you. I have been a licensed financial, insurance, investment advisor, estate planning. I'm also an enrolled agent accountant. I have my own practice. It's located in Collinsdale. I've been doing this, even though I look very young. I've been doing this for the better part of almost 28, going on 29 years. So I'm not a spring cookie. This is not something I just popped up with. But more importantly, and sometimes I think this is the thing that's important, is I have the life experiences personally through myself, my family, my friends, and my clients that I serve. So I'm empathetic with this. So again, this is why I don't believe in talking at people, talking down to people. I want to engage and educate you. Whether you work with me or anybody, I just don't want you to allow you to lose. One of the things, the biblical passage is, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. You won't leave here without knowledge tonight, okay? So if you perish, it won't be because of that. So I put that on my heart. One of the things, as we talk about Bywood, and some of us that are getting older and becoming more seasoned, we remember our communities. They were thriving economic hubs. Everybody had a home, or they were homeowners, and you saw what is bantered about in today's age, generational wealth. My mom or Nana or Mima, or whatever you want to call it, they passed their house down to the next generation and the next generation. Home ownership is and has always been one of the key economic drivers to wealth. All right, real estate. Why? Because whether or not you paint your house, whether or not you put a deck on your house or you do anything, your home appreciates because of your neighbors, because of other people in your neighborhood. So as this wealth building tool appreciates, at some point, except for, let me see if I get this right correctly, Pastor, Moses and Elijah, they're the only two people who escaped death, if I'm right. All of us will have a day where we have to see our maker, which means you're going to leave everything you have behind. That generational wealth piece. What happens? I have watched so many people lose and go through the process of generational wealth stripping because of unpreparedness. All right? Because they didn't do some of the basic things. All right? This does not have to be complicated. All right? We have a judge here, so law, somebody who understands and judges the law. We know we can make this more complicated than what it has to be, but we can keep this very simple. I practice the acronym every day. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Let's keep things simple. If you do a little bit of preparation, you will save your family a bunch of headache and heartache, and you can perpetuate the generational wealth. All right? One of the things is the stigmatism behind it. People believe when we start talking about this and having this conversation, we're hurrying upon our demise. It's the furthest thing from the truth. What you're actually doing is you're preventing the demise of your assets that you have worked hard your entire life to accumulate. I have these conversations day in and day out. Just yesterday, new client, she was explaining to me that her husband is a government employee. about 2020, right in the heart of the beginning of the pandemic, her husband decided he wanted to retire. He put in his retirement paperwork on the Friday before Memorial Day. A week and a half later, he had a massive stroke. All right. She has spent the better part, what did she say, almost 5 years fighting through different things, from the power of attorney, from him having to go into a nursing home, from them, the nursing home and Medicaid and these different entities making them spend down their assets. Then trying to have him go back. He had another stroke, I think, what did she say, 2 years ago. They wanted him afterwards to go back into the nursing home, and she said, no, I want him to come home. So it really, things had to get spent down. You compound that with the fact that she, just before he had the stroke, she had just went out on disability. All right? They have 2 daughters. Now, if you want to see everybody in uproar when I say this to you, guess what her profession is? Anybody, take a wild guess. No. Say it again. Lawyer. And she went through this. You know what she was telling me last night? She said, we go to law school. This is an elective. Nobody wants to practice family law. There's no money to be made in it. She said, but oh boy, have I learned a lot over the last 4 years. So when I was presenting to the group, she said, you know it better than my law school professors. I said, because this is what I practice day in and day out. It's little simple nuances. Now, they were able, because they were in Connecticut, to keep the house because Connecticut law has a provision that does not require the person who's receiving the aid to have to get rid of their home. So they're going to keep this house, but that's it. All of their life savings and everything else is gone. She's out on disability, but now she's trying to find a job to go back to work to take care, because look at what's going on. So as I'm walking through this, these are the stories, all right? You probably know someone in your family. You may have experienced it. Your friend of yours, or you heard about it. This happens all the time. Most of the times when things go wrong, we're unprepared. And the thing that gets my goat more than anything else, my soon-to-be lovely bride, April 11th, we're 3 weeks away from this, y'all. 3 weeks. She'll tell you, if you ever want to see me hair on fire and want to do cartwheels and beat my chest like a gorilla, let me find out that a person passes away, had no life insurance, and we start doing the GoFundMe. Oh, I'm adamant, because I'll remember when I saw them posting the Jordans that they wore, all the trips that they took and everything else, and they have set their family up for financial ruin. They didn't have a will in place. They didn't have their life insurance in place. They didn't have a trust. Now their family is scrambling. Have you ever wanted to see the demise of a family? Let somebody die without a will and let a house be involved. Watch everybody turn on anybody. Everybody will shake their head. We've all seen it. People will turn on each other over little tiny assets. So I said all that as a preference to this fireside chat, because I wanted to set the tone that this is not, a lot of times people will come to you with a sales pitch, throw the sales pitch out the way. If I don't do anything else but steer you straight, that's my job. I just want to steer you straight to go do something. If you wasn't motivated before, by the time this is done, it could just be, you may need one simple thing, but at least do that one simple thing. All right, so let's start at the beginning and at the basics. All right? How many people in here are homeowners? All right? Have you planned your succession for where that house is going and taken into consideration? I know I'm on you. That's my mother-in-law to be, so I'm on her. She has no choice. These two right here, they have no choice. Everybody else, but how many people have really thought that succession plan out? But they haven't done anything. So I'm going to pick with Auntie Robin and I'm pretty sure y'all want Manny to get that house, don't you? Ah, see, this is why we had to have this conversation. Do we want Manny to get the house or not? But well, and see, here's the thing. It may not even be a real question of, and this is a mistake that happens. It's not about him wanting the house. It's you give him no choice, and you said it that all those years, those mortgage payments. How many of y'all remember made those mortgage payments and know how to say, if you don't pay anything else, you paid your mortgage. You might not have went on vacation. You might not have had the newest clothes. You might not have done a lot of things, but you paid that mortgage. And when that mortgage was done being paid, or as close to being done being paid, you celebrate. It's like the greatest feeling on earth because if I can do this right, the Latin epidemiology of the word mortgage is death. You take on a 30-year death sentence. All right? People don't know that. They're so quick to get a mortgage, you're quick to give yourself death because you're indebted for something that provides you with one of the 5 basic tenets of living, shelter. If you do not pay that, they will take what was yours away until you pay for it. And even after the mortgage is paid, don't pay your property taxes. They'll come take your property still. It's never yours. All you're doing is your barn. Everything is the Lord's, and the earth there, the fullness thereof. And you don't pay your taxes. The house is the government's. All right. So this is the real question. If you spent all these years making these mortgage payments only for the government to take it back, because here's the horror story. In Delaware County, you go to the courthouse in Media. I can't remember the room number, but I know you go through the checkpoint, you go all the way at the hallway, you make that turn, you go down the hallway, you go in, and just when you come through that first main landing, right to the left of you, register of wills. Don't have your stuff in order. Oh boy, here comes the forms, the taxes and stuff, or this has to be paid. You go through what's called the probate process. All right? Does anybody know what that process, well, you can't answer. All right? Anybody else know what probate really is? You can just give me what you think. Don't be shy. The fireside chat. I'm telling you, fireside chat. I'm practicing this, Pastor. I'm practicing this. So, I like that. Probate is it is a probationary, it's a period of transition. So what occurs is this. I'm going to use some terminology. If you have a pen, write it down. I want you to get this. When a person passes away, one of the very first things that occurs is that a death certificate is generated by a medical professional. All right? That is the first death certificate. With that death certificate, you would normally go to the Register of Wills, whether it's in Media for Delaware County, Norristown for Montgomery County, Philadelphia City Hall, room 105 on the first floor City Hall for Philadelphia County. I can't think of Bucks in Chester County, but those counties. You go there with your death certificate. Now, with the person's death certificate, if the person died and did not have a last will and testament, they die what we call intestate. All right? I-N, testate. If they have a will, they die testate. All right? Here's where this stuff becomes important. That's why I use these terms. If you go to the Register of Will and you have this death certificate for a person and there is no will, what will begin in that process is a judge has to appoint you as an administrator of that person's estate. All right? If there is a will, they will appoint someone as the executor or executrix of the estate. All right? This is where the probate process begins. It is the public, key word, public settling of the decedent's estate, which means that anyone who may have a valid legal claim against that estate can come forward. It is also the process for the assets of the decedent to be distributed to their heirs or beneficiaries according to their wishes, if there was a will, or according to the court, if there is no will. If even with a will or without it, if there's a dispute, this means that that settlement process is being contested. All right? Now, why is all of this important? Because this process can be time-consuming, costly, frustrating, and I have watched it suck the will and the joy out of people in this process. And the one thing that everybody forgets when a person dies, what is the very first and most important thing you should be, the first two things you should be doing when a person dies? Grieve and celebrate in their life. But when you're so tied up in forms, going here, doing this, doing that, you forget and you do not give yourself the appropriate time to grieve and to really celebrate that person's life. All right? Now, in that process, one of the things that I watch happen so frequently, and when I bring this up, I'm gonna watch people laugh. I watch that relative or someone close to that person take a debit card and go to the bank and start withdrawing money out of bank accounts. You know that's called bank fraud, right? As soon as the person dies, that account is done. If you go and take money out of that deceased person's account, you've just committed bank fraud. When that person passes, that account is supposed to be closed, and an estate account is supposed to be open for the process of probate to settle out an estate. I have watched people take dead people's Social Security money, retirement money, liquidate all the accounts, not try to say anything. The person wasn't even cold yet, and they were looking for, where's Nana's purse at? Why, I'm going to the bank. I got to take all the money out of the account before the bank finds out that they died. You sound like a criminal. Literally. Let me go run to the bank before they know that she died. Where they do that at? So, as you can see, this process right here, that's a lot. Everything we just said is a lot. And if you are unaware, or sometimes people mistake this term and take it the wrong way, ignorant. Ignorant just means don't have the knowledge. Doesn't mean you're dumb. It means you don't have the knowledge. If you're unaware or ignorant to what's going on, you can fall prey to a lot of these things occurring. All right? So, before I start really bothering people, I'm going to pause here and I'm going to ask if you have questions, or if any of this so far sounds like anything you have seen, which you should have, because if all of us have lived long enough, we've seen or heard or been a part of any of this, I'll take a moment to you can speak out, because I know sometimes it starts to well up here, or you can ask me questions. So take a minute. My trusty assistant, can you clock me for 2 minutes? 2 minutes. All right, 2 minutes. Anybody. Talk to me. Yes, ma'am. So, who holds the trust? I was about to get to that, so we'll come back to that. All right.
Does it make sense to put accounts in more than one person's name? Then the other person can access that account when the other person dies.
So, I'm gonna give you the perfect scenario, right? And you and Auntie Robin have been married for a long time. Sheena and I aspire to this. y'all have joint accounts, correct? Auntie Robin, do you have your own account somewhere? Do you got your own account somewhere? He's pleading the fifth. He's pleading the fifth. He's pleading the fifth. But in this scenario, why did I bring that up? Because if something happened to Auntie Robin, you would have to go through the probate process to touch her account. She may not want you on that. That might be Auntie Robin's allowance. And you, as a married couple, were okay with that. But what happens if something happened to Auntie Robin and you would think, well, I'm married, that's my wife. The bank is going to laugh at you and tell you so. You aren't on an account.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. To me, it just makes sense if you're married to one anyway, okay, then I should have access to whether I touch it or not is totally different.
I agree.
You see what I'm saying?
She doesn't agree. You can see her. We will have joint accounts, but we will have separate. But this is where when we get into the conversation, when we're talking about the trust, when we're coming down there, that's where some of this stuff comes into play. But then you were thinking of you two, but what happens when both of you, then it becomes Manny's responsibility. And the probate process will still kick in.
We have time for one last question.
Okay, I understand what he's saying and what you're saying as far as the joint account. Joint account, again, primary person on that account. But isn't it beneficial, more beneficial, and to me it is, to have a beneficiary put on that account? You can go to the bank and put a beneficiary on that account.
So, your answer, it's better to, the issue with having a second person on the account is they have all the account right and access. Whether or not they exercise it is between you and them, but they can have it. Can you add beneficiaries to your account? Yes, but not every bank will do it. Not every bank and not every bank account. Yes, that is banks are in the business of making money. So they're not going, a lot of banks nowadays, especially larger commercial banks, will not do these things. So payable upon death, all of them don't do that either. It's more money. So here, if you listen to the steps that I walked you through, when that person passes and that death certificate, and then you go down to the register of will, when you go down there and you start the probate process, they give you what's called the long form death certificate, all right? And you start the settlement process of the estate. You have to give them an estimation on what the account values and things are, because there are inheritance taxes that need to be paid. What happens is, for the bank, guess what they're able to do? Close that account and open up a new account. They make money by opening up new accounts. Why would I just want to give you the check when I can force you to close the account and open up the account? And then when you say payable upon death, if all I have to do is walk into the bank with a death certificate and I can take a check, I don't need to go to the register of will and now I'm skimping them on taxes. See, they want that inheritance tax. Not every bank will even let it happen. Not every bank will do it. So some banks still do it. So these are the questions. That's why I know what you were saying. That's why I've run into, there's certain credit unions that will still do it. There's certain smaller banks, Sharon Savings Bank, I still believe will allow for certain things like that to happen, but it's not prevalent. Because again, it is a means to keep a taxing entity from getting their taxes that they would love to get, because they need revenue to pick up our trash and do all those things, so forth, so forth. So that was the first part. Now let's start talking about those assets. Like we were talking about the house. You have your house, you have your bank accounts, you have your car. Well, I've seen the comedy with the car. Person dies, somebody takes the car and drives, not even paying the car, no car insurance. They just drive in the car. That was Pop's car, so I'm gonna just drive the car. So you have your house, you have your cars, you might have assets. I'll give you a good one. This is a conversation with me and my mother. In my mother's closet are 2 fur coats, a pair of Louis Vuitton red bottom shoes, and some other stuff. The day that the Lord calls my mom home to glory, that house is getting locked. Not a soul will step foot in there. I want nothing in that house. Sheena and my mama Mona, they have heard me say that. I want nothing. I can't have my mama. I don't want anything else. But I know some people who would go into that closet and they'd be like, oh, this is like going shopping. Look at all this stuff that's in here. Wow, Hercules. No. But these are important assets that you don't think about. My mom has priceless china. She has one-of-a-kind china, porcelain china dolls and different things. There's all these. You have to think about all of the things you have accumulated that you want to pass along that may have a value. All right? And who do you want to pass it along to? I've seen a couple people come in here with young children. As parents, you realize that if something, God forbid, let me knock on chair, something happened to you and you have a minor and you intended for things to go to that child, I could tell you horror stories of it never made it to that child because you did not put the right things in place to ensure that your child would be taken care of. We all intend to live that long life and to see our children grow, but there is no guarantee. No one knows at a appointed hour. So you need to prepare for these things. All right? Another asset that I run into because I'm an accountant, y'all. So it's my busy season. And when I talk to my clients, 95% of my clients are small business owners. I ask them, so if something happens to you, who's getting the business? And they say, huh? I said, something happened to you, what's happened to the business? Is it going to die with you? And they look at me like I'm crazy. I said, so if you don't have anything in place, your business will end with you. Because let's go back to that bank account scenario. Who can walk into the bank when you die and go up and say, my wife had this small business here. She's passed away. I'm her husband. I'm going to take over and manage the affairs. They're going to laugh at you and say, have you started the estate settlement process, the probate process? We need this because we're going to have to close out that account and this. And have you know, the business just died because you did not plan or have a succession plan for certain things. So if you have a LLC, a S Corp or a C Corp, a side hustle or something like that that you are operating and engaging in, you need a succession plan for that because when you pass, that money will sit in the account and there's no, remember what I told you, it's bank fraud. Go to the bank, try to take the money out with the ATM card, let them find out, you're in trouble. All right? So, I said all that to be said when we were talking about the first process, the probate process. There is a term that is bantered around heavily on social media everywhere, and part of the reason why we're talking tonight. The term trust. Trust, I need to trust, trust, I need to trust. I'm going to, just to co-sign, because I have someone of the law here. There are, would you say, about more than over 100 versions of a trust, because it's really just terminology. The trust, it's all about the legal terms of the trust and how it's titled. Am I correct, Judge? It just, the law is nothing but terms, isn't it? So there are numerous versions of trust. I can tell you because I deal with it. There's over 100 versions of trust. And it's all about just changing one word around here. But what I will tell you is that 95% of the people need one of the most basic, simple forms of trust. The more complicated your life, the more complicated the trust may need to be. But for the average person will need what is called a revocable living trust. All right? It is not the end-all, end-all, but it is a piece of your estate plan. The other common version of a trust is what we call irrevocable. Irrevocable living trust. So let's listen to those first two words for you to understand what we're doing. Revocable, irrevocable. What do you think revocable means? Change. What do you think irrevocable means? All right. So when you are establishing a trust, you have to determine, do I want to make changes? Or when I set this, I will never make changes. Now, do you understand why 95% of the people get the revocable one? Because life is, as we say, you know, in our vernacular, life be lifing. So you want to be able to make changes as time goes along. Irrevocable trusts do have their place. All right. Typically, I see that when, and I deal with that when a family will be inheriting land down south, and it's a group of them, and they want to make sure that that land continuously gets passed along and that it is never taken out of the family. They set up an irrevocable trust. But what I find for individuals, because you may buy property, you may sell property, you may have a business, you may let go of a business, you may have your children may bump their head and you decide you want to disinherit them. You want to make changes as your life goes along. So you would be looking at a revocable trust. So then the question is, well, what is a trust? A trust is a private contract that allows for the transference of assets, your assets, while alive, to an entity that is created to prevent and to circumvent probate. That's what it is. You're going to create an entity that you're going to transfer your assets. You grant. So these are terms you will hear. Trust. You heard revocable, irrevocable. You will grant, meaning you are going to place or give the assets to this trust that you've created. In the establishment of the trust, you can obtain a EIN number now. I see a lot of times people say, oh, I'll wait till the person that gets your EIN number now while you're alive. You're going to grant it to your trust, and you're going to become what is called the trustee, the person who controls the asset. If you are married, you have co-trustees, so you and Lady Audrey would be co-trustees. If you're single, you would be the trustee. You have granted the assets to your trust. You are the trustee. You establish the trust. You fund the trust with these assets. What were the assets? Your home, other real estate, business, bank accounts, priceless artifacts, jewelry, whatever it is you want to put in, guns, cryptocurrency, digital property, intellectual property, anything that is of value that would transfer over, you place inside of this trust. And then you select what is called your successor trustee. That person is similar to the executor of your estate. What is their job? To administer the distribution of the assets that you've placed in a trust when you die. That's when their power kicks in. And at that point, a revocable trust, when you die, becomes irrevocable, meaning the terms can change. What you said had to happen, had to happen. You do not have to go down to the register of wills. You do not have to do any of those things. All that stuff was addressed by putting the assets into the trust. So that answered your question when you asked me who holds the trust. You are the trustee. It's not registered. It's your private document. It is a contract where you said, I'm granting my assets to my trust. I am going to be the trustee, the controller, and so will be the successor trustee to distribute the assets to the beneficiaries I have named in here. So they will get it. See how we haven't done anything in probate? These things were done and named there. Any assets that you don't put into a trust, you would have what we call a pour over will. So a will would still be there. Your will would still say what your final wishes were, but if you did not place an asset in your trust, it pours over into a will, which is what? Subject to what? Probate. So you will want to put all of the assets you don't want to go through probate in your trust. All right? If you have minor children, you can establish in your trust sub-trusts for minors. That prevents the state from establishing a trust. You could dictate the terms on when they receive the money, how, or assets, how much they receive, when that trust would end, and all of those different things. Your trust can also, you can also stipulate who you'd like to be your guardian of your young children and a backup guardian. All right? That's where you start to see and why people banter around about trust. They make it into all these different things. There are other things and ways you can use your trust, but let's keep it simple, stupid. What are we using it for? We want to avoid probate and that unnecessary process. Something else you can put inside of your trust, your bank accounts. When I set these up for my clients and I tell them to go to the bank and open up a trust bank account, they say, what? They go to the bank with their trust document, with their EIN number, and they tell their bank, where they already have their personal accounts, I'd like to open up a trust account and move my money from my personal account to my trust account. The bank says, okay. They read it, they make sure everything is okay. They open up the bank account, they transfer the money over, and guess what you just did? You avoided that account having to go through probate. Now, Deke could make sure that Auntie Robin had access to his account when he passed without that whole process, because the bank would already know that Robin Wilkins she's the beneficiary on this trust that was nominated. She's the successor trustee and the beneficiary. So she could just go in and keep operating the account. All right? That's where that goes. Pastor. A trust and a will. What occurs, and I get that question all the time. If you have assets, and I hear this all the time, well, I don't have much. Do you got bank accounts? Yes. Then you got an asset. Do you have a house? Yes, you got an asset. If you have your assets, you're going to move them into a trust, but you still want your will, even if you got all the assets in the trust, because your will is your last will and testament. You're giving instructions on how I want to be buried, how all these different things. You still want that there. And you normally would say whoever your successor trustee is, they are your executor to handle that. And what I also have found over years, and sometimes it's because of when they did it previously with someone else, they paid for their trust, and that person was going to make them pay an arm and a leg to amend or adjust the trust. They accumulate new assets that aren't in the trust, and that's when the will has to kick in, because those assets weren't a part of the trust, and that will is necessary to help expedite the probate process. So sometimes people forget to update their wills, or they just don't update their wills, their trust, and they'll have assets that are sitting outside of it. So that's why you have a will, you have a trust and a will that pour over. All right, so before I go to the third section, because sometimes there's something worse than death. All right, trustee assistant, isn't she lovely, y'all? That is my unpaid assistant. I love her. I pay her in love. So anybody has questions? 2 minutes. I'm answering questions. Anybody?
And don't have a trust yet. You thought you were doing the right thing. You put everything in the will. Now you say, oh, I need a trust. That stuff that you have, you may be taking some things out of that will and putting it in the trust. So how would that work?
So in reality, what you said in the will was who you wanted to get what, right? That's all you're going to say in the trust. You're just moving the assets while you're alive into your trust, but your trust stipulates when I die, this goes to so-and-so and so-and-so, but it escapes the probate process of doing it. It automatically will just go. So that's what here's what I want you to understand. If you die today with that will, whoever you've appointed as your executor has to go and go through a process to distribute these assets. If you put it into a trust, all right, now that same person can become your successor trustee. They don't have to go to the register of will. They don't have to go do that, and they still do what you told them to do, and the assets will pass. So nothing changes as far as the distribution. You're just getting ahead of it to avoid the extra burden of probate.
I was just going to say, which costs more, the trust or the will?
Oh, every trust every day of the week, including Sundays, 3 times on Sundays. However, that is typically the number one thing that prohibits people from doing it. Now, I'm going to give you an honest story. Another client I picked up about a month ago. Her and I are talking. She said, I just did my trust. The attorney charged me $5,000. I said, oh, well, you know, our process is a fraction of the cost. This and everything. She said, yeah, and the portal you use. I said, the portal? I said, let me see what the portal looks like. They pulled up the portal. It was our portal. We used this. And I told her, I said, the attorneys designed it for us to do so that we would not get in trouble for the unlicensed practice of law. I am never going to jail for that. I'm not built for jail. I am licensed in a lot of things, but I'm not going to jail for that. But the attorneys built a platform for licensed estate planners and financial planners and accountants to use after we were trained and certified to go through this, and they're still a part of it. If something gets out of my purview and my scope within our program, all we do is hit a button, and an attorney will come on, and they will take over to protect us, CYA. They make sure I'm okay. So this way, I'm able to offer the services at a fraction of what most people pay for it. Because typically, I see people go get their trust done, and I've heard $2,500, $5,000, $10,000. That's what the young lady told me the other day. She said upwards of $10,000, and when she heard and she saw, she almost passed out. It's a barrier for people doing it because we work hard. We don't have this extra disposable money. We want to do what's right, but we can't afford it to do it. So sometimes you're just like, well, we're just going to let the chips fall where they may and just let it all happen. And you end up costing your family more than if you had the access to it. So that's why I said my people perish for a lack of knowledge. It's out there. We use the same software platform that they use. Anybody else?
Speak up.
So let me, LegalZoom will allow you to download do-it-yourself. So I'm going to give a reference story about do-it-yourself. Not about that. Everybody in here knows that God did not bless me with hands to do real technical things. One thing I learned early on in life, I was never supposed to be an auto mechanic. I hang with auto mechanics. I've owned over 30 cars. I have auto mechanics as clients. I've learned what they were supposed to do. So I decided one day that I wanted to change my own brakes. I had watched my brakes being changed years. I followed every step and didn't realize I forgot one until I was going down the hill by Baltimore Avenue, and I was speeding, and I put my foot on the brake, and it went to the floor, and I'm pushing, and it wouldn't slow down, and God protected fools and babies, that I didn't hit anything, and the car rolled to a stop. I took it to the mechanic, and when I showed the mechanic, they bust out laughing. They said, you did an awesome job, but you forgot to bleed the brake line. What? He said, you never watched them sit there and pump the brake line? I said, well, yeah, I was trying to do it myself. They said, so here's the funny thing. How much did you pay for those brakes? $50. How much time did it take you? A few hours. Guess what? We're not even going to fix that. We have to take those brakes off and put a whole nother set of brakes on, and we're going to charge you all of that. So wouldn't it have just been smarter for you to just to pay us and not try to do it yourself? And it was at that point, again, I never worked on a car. Last 15 years, I've never worked on a car. I know how to change it. I won't do it. That's what happens when you do it yourself. You think that you are doing something until you find out at the worst possible time, oh, this is not sufficient. It's actually deficient. So that's what happens with do-it-yourself. All right. So I'm going to move to the third part of this. And I said sometimes there's things worse than death. I'm going to pick on you, young lady. All right? Not dying. But what if, let's do the what if something was to physically happen to you and you became incapacitated and you could not manage your affairs? Who's going to manage them for you? Yeah, I like that one. If anyone has ever lived or experienced that, you know that could be a very ugly thing. Because the thing that you don't think about is, what if I'm hurt or sick and I can't manage my affairs? Who do I trust? Here's the key word, trust, to manage my bank accounts, to manage my business. If you're a small business owner, to manage my business, to manage my affairs, to talk to the mortgage company, to deal with the car note company, to do all those things. Who do I trust? And how much power do I want to give to that person? I see it happen time and time again that people get caught without the third part of this, the power of attorney. It's actually the durable, which means it kicks in when you become incapacitated, limited, you limit what they can do, power of attorney. And in this power of attorney, they give you options where you choose how much power or how little power. Case in point, your power of attorney, you could give a power. I had this conversation last night. Do you give them the power to create, manage, or dissolve a trust? See this trust that you just created? Do you trust someone with enough power to create a new trust for you, to manage or modify the existing trust you have, or dissolve it? Nope. That was very nope. Not giving them that power. Do you trust them to manage your bank accounts? Nope. So why? I laughed. This is the way you make a power of attorney. They was like, I might need to find a different power of attorney. I don't want them in my bank accounts. Do you give them power to talk to the mortgage company? Do you give them power to give gifts? Do you give them power to deal with your insurance? Who is the person? A mistake that is made. All right. How many people in here are married? Soon to be. We can raise our hand. We soon to be. All right. A mistake that is made is that it is automatically assumed that because you're married, you have that person as a power of attorney. Remember those bank accounts? That's where it starts to kick in, and you learn, oh no, just because we're married, we had separate accounts. You're not on that account. And unless you are her power of attorney, you can't go manage her accounts. And what if her account is the account that pays the mortgage payment? You can't write the check or access the money to make the mortgage payments. We got a problem. So just because you're married, and I see that misnomer all the time, does not mean that your spouse is automatically your power of attorney. You have to grant them power of attorney to manage things that they are not a part of. If it's a joint account, if it's something joint, no problem. But if it's hers or if it's mine, we need power of attorney to manage each other's affairs, including her businesses and my businesses. Just because that will be my wife does not mean that that is my business, nor is my business is her business. We have to give each other power of attorney. That's why I said sometimes things are worse than death, because that person is alive and they could be incapacitated for an indefinite amount of time. You want them to die because you have a trust and stuff. Like, please die, hurry up so I can manage these affairs. No, they just hang on. They're not going anywhere. What do? You have to go through the process of being appointed the conservator. See, Pastor knows all about that one, the conservatorship. That's a whole nother, that's his wheelbarrow. I don't even want to touch that. I stay out of that lane. But that is the other process that goes through it. So, sure. that's why all of these things become important, because here was a situation. Something happened. Auntie Robin is Uncle Deke's power of attorney. Something happens to Auntie Robin. There's no new power of attorney. He's in a hospital. Guess what has to happen? State steps in. Pastor becomes guardian. And then Manny may be sitting there saying, wait a minute, why are you the guardian of my dad? I'm his son. Because nobody put anything on paper. And this can create tension and a very contentious situation I watch it with nieces and nephews, aunts and uncles. This is why this is not a somber conversation, as I said earlier. This is a fireside chat. I want you, whether you talk to me or anyone else, get your act together. Because I know something in what I said, because I'm looking at people's faces. I plucked somebody's nerve someplace. Everybody, I touched something. I hit that third rail for you. I don't know what it is, and everybody is different. That's why this is not cookie cutter. But I'm bringing this up because this is what prohibits generational wealth. You have to spin down assets. I will briefly touch onto that. Because if you do not address these things while you are healthy and well, what can occur is this. Now you have these assets and you want qualified care. Well, the government says before we give you anything, we want you to have some skin in the game. Spin down. So I watch people try to be 2-bit slick and try to get rid of them and do stuff real quick. They have what's now used to be 3 year. Oh no, so it's 7 year. So she's at 5. See, last I heard the other day was 3. You said 5 and 7. They getting even more. Listen, so they saying if you need to do it now, because you got 7 years that they're going to go back to see where you were trying to get rid of your assets before they give you assistance. And if they find that you were trying to get over on them, they penalize you for a couple extra years on top of the spin down time. So pretty much in order for the government to aid you, they want you to impoverish you. They want you broke before they help you. Hence the dissolution of wealth. They want you broke and unable to pass your wealth to the next generation in order for them to assist you. This is why you have to get on top of it. All right? So questions there. There we go. I know I was touching on something. A living will or a living trust. Okay. Oh, I know what you were talking about when we were talking about the power of attorney. Let me walk you through. So what we were talking about is, let's say you were a single woman and you have never appointed or drawn up or designated a power of attorney. You're incapacitated. Somebody needs to make decisions for you. The hospital does not want that liability and responsibility. They just want to treat you and street you. So they go to the court. Pastor's laughing, but he knows that's what they want to treat you and street you. They want to do no harm, but they want to get you out because you taking up a bed. So what they do is they want to petition the state to say, we need somebody to step in and to make decisions and be a guardian over this person and their affairs. So you have a will. You have a will. All right. So your will only kicks in when you die. They can't make changes to your will. Your will would stipulate who is going to handle your final affairs, who is going to execute your estate. But while you're alive, that guardian is in charge of everything. So your beneficiaries and an executor are waiting, praying that you die so that they could get control of things, because as long as you're alive, the guardian has complete power and control. everybody is ethical as pastors. Yes, that is correct. So how the chain goes is you can appoint your power of attorney. Power of attorney's power only is in effect until your last breath. When the doctor calls you, the power of attorney dies, that document stops, becomes null and void, and that's when the will and or the trust kick in. Now, there's one other piece to this puzzle that you should think of. They call it the living will. That's why when you said that, or advanced health directives. Who will make the decisions in regards to your life and life-saving measures? So Sheena and I joked about this. I was a organ donor, not anymore. Told me I can't. She said, "You revoke that now. Revoke it." However, I also told her that I want all life-saving measures. So if you need to put my head in a glass jar and let me just sit around until for perpetuity, I don't. If they can hold me on, just keep me around. I want to see. But these are the choices. You may not want life-saving measures. You may want life-saving measures. You may want to donate your organs. You may not want to donate your organs. You may want certain things. This is where that advanced health directive, or other places call it the living will, is established. That is the other piece to that puzzle. Because while your power of attorney is managing your affairs, this living will or advanced health directives is to give instructions in case of health emergencies, life-saving measures. Then your last will and testament, if you don't have a trust, kicks in. But if you have a living, revocable living trust, your revocable living trust will do its job in anything that is not held inside of the trust. Then your pour over last will and testament kicks in. So those are your 4 pieces to that estate plan puzzle. What I find is that people have bits and pieces, some of it, none of it. It's cost prohibitive, they're confused. But as you can see, it's really not that difficult if somebody talks to you and keeps it simple. I can give you all of the terminology and make your head hurt. Sometimes I do it, I forget, and I'll just get to talking terminology. But instead, I realize that if I empower you with the knowledge, the general knowledge, you can go figure out who do I need to talk to and how do I get this done. Yes, ma'am.
I put it this way. If you love me, it's like on my mind, you would do it. I am the only child. You love me, don't let me have to make all these decisions when I'm stressed, if I'm sad, if I'm upset, if I'm supposed to be grieving. I don't want to have to look for these things. I should already know where it is, because I had to do that with my dad's mom when she passed away. We couldn't find the paperwork, but she never said where it was. So now we're supposed to be grieving, so now we're trying to find stuff. If something happens to her, God forbid, health wise, I don't want to make that decision. Have it where it's already made, and I just have to say follow what she said. I don't want to have to worry about what did you want, and let that already be done. We're close knit. We don't want to stress. Let us just do what we do and call it a day. I love you, but if you love me, you would already have it in place. It's not, what's it, talking about death and scary and all that. You love me, please already have it. I told him, you love me, you got 2 of these businesses in account, don't do that to me. Already have it in place, put it down somewhere or something, because why would you want your loved one to do it?
And she's telling the truth. Like, my mother-in-law over there, her stuff is done not for my sake, but for her sake, which is my sake. So she took care of it. I took care of mine. As soon as I knew that the 2 were becoming 1, everything is drawn up. She gets and we have it set in such a way that it goes to her, but my daughters are also taken care of in there, and there are provisions and different things. We've had these conversations. Why? Because it's important. As a married couple, you have to have these conversations. We We don't have to talk about it all the time. We talked about it, we figured it out, we set things up. We know we're going to have to make some changes once we do get married. We know that changes would happen when children are born into, more children are born into it. We know as more assets are accumulated, changes will have to happen. But these are the conversations. Now, if you're not married, whenever life changes occur, make these changes. And the person or persons you trust, you let them know. This is the crazy thing. People don't want to let the people that they're appointed in there know, because they're afraid that they're going to do something. They can't do anything. Nay, as the notary, unless she notarizes the document, nothing happens. And once it's notarized, and that's if you get it notarized by any notary, in order to make changes, a new document has to be produced, and the signatures have to be done all over again. So once you've done it, you can let people see it, and you can let them know. The only thing you might do is encourage them to kill you, trip you, and do something. Questions? I'm done with the spiel. I'm here to talk to y'all now. Y'all asked me, got about 15 minutes for me to answer any questions you may have. Recitate. Do not resuscitate. Take it away from, don't leave the guilt. Like you heard me say, so y'all are public witnesses to what's already on this private document. Something ever happens to me, y'all will see my head in a jar someplace, because I told her I don't want to go. Keep me around. You can't. So what you should do is, the person that would be in charge, let your wife have it, but you also can give it to your primary care physician. You want it to be, because honestly, that's a situation that occurred with my uncle, my grandfather. So my grandfather had a situation where he would have needed emergency heart surgery for a hole in his heart. And for whatever reason, my grandfather listed my uncle as his point of contact. Mind you, my mom is his power of attorney and had the advanced health director, but he listed my uncle as the as the contact. So the hospital calls him saying, your father is going to need this surgery and X, Y, and Z, yada, 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 yada. We just want to make sure something. So my uncle said, yeah, get ready, go prep him and do all these things, save my father's life. Called my mom, Dad, Dad is about to have surgery. He's about to have what? I was sitting next to my mom, about to have what? Surgery. What's wrong? And he was explaining. She said, Douglas, yeah, he ain't about to have nothing. He said, what do you mean? He's not going to have anything. Kinji, go into my drawer over in my safe, into my file cabinet. Pull out. She said, per his advanced health directive, dated this notarized, he is not to get this, none of this. He said, let him go. My uncle, well, you can hear him. He has used every cuss word known to man to say. She said, Douglas, I love you, you're my little brother. Go ahead and have that surgery and watch you be in court someplace. So would you like for me to call the hospital back? And he hung up on her, boom. Called her back, call the hospital. Called her, let my father go on. How would you like me to get this advanced health directive? He said X, Y, and Z. Thank you, man. I'm his power of attorney, and I'm listed on the health directive. And my grandfather passed. They could have saved his life, but he said, don't save him. So, in that spirit and that light, so now I flip to my other side. Whether you're a homeowner or not, if you're a homeowner, it's a deduction on your for it actually makes your homeowner's insurance cheaper. I would encourage you, highly encourage you, to invest in a fire safe box or safe that is digital, not even a key, digital. Because keys get lost, and if the key gets lost and something happens and you got to have somebody come out, drill, or try to open it, the digital one. You can have digital with a key, but preferably digital. You can also open up a safety deposit box. There are not a lot of banks nowadays that you find with them, but if you can find a bank with a safety deposit box, do it. One thing that I would like to do, and Sheena and I will talk about it some more, sometimes you have to, parents, pastors, I trust pastor with my life. So, pastor, here are certain documents, because if something were to happen to me, he would be officiating. So he needs to know what's going on. What changes, he's not going to make changes. I trust him. So he would be able to, my mother-in-law, my mother, pastor would all be able to talk to her because she would be inconsolable. And they would help her make, he said this, he said that. Even if she's not thinking, he said this, he said that. So that's why it's important to have these documents, notarize them, and then have people you trust with it. I see you with the popcorn. I want some of the popcorn, but you got to go with that. Got some popcorn? He told me, he said, no. Yeah, I said, can I have some popcorn? He said, no, sir. They got you. They got you. Any other questions? So you have these issues with, and I've watched this, there's another grandparent. Remember, this is your asset. This is your home. The process of transferring into the trust to help avoid that is one way to do it. Actually giving it to your child or doing it while you're alive, you're giving away your ownership. So what I've seen, Manny isn't that child, but I've seen some unscrupulous children. I vehemently recommend and go against it. Manny is not that child, but I know a lot of children who, you go ahead, now they own the house and they can go refinance the house. They can go do things and they don't have to tell you anything about it because you gave it away. It's no longer your asset. All right, so.
Isn't it, also that there's some tax implications there because now you've given an asset away. Now they have to file their taxes.
They're inheriting it. They're inheriting it and the value thereof. So there's assessments and things. This is why when you're doing it through the probate, when you're doing it through the trust process, what is created is called a quit claim deed. You're deeding it from you to something that you control. So you're not actually selling the asset. You're transferring your ownership right in that asset. They're inheriting in their process. They're inheriting their property. You just skirted it. Look, you done came up here with the juice, the popcorn. You ain't offered to share nothing. I mean, we can I have some? Can I have some? You so handsome. You getting away with it. You handsome. You getting away with it. Yes, at the bottom of this is our website, my email, and my business cell phone number for you to get in there. So this was just a good way to do it. Gave you some information on there. Gave you, I tried to, the teacher in me, I like to do visual demonstrations. So I wanted to give a visual demonstration of what this could look like. Again, will everybody's be a little different? Yes. Everybody doesn't have the same assets. Everybody doesn't have the same things. I will say this to you. again, whether it's me, whether it's anyone else, I just want you to get it together. I want to see us, after all the effort that we put into accumulating generational wealth or generating this wealth, we are able to pass that along. Biblically, one of my jobs is to not only accumulate wealth, but accumulate wealth and to pass it along, to leave an inheritance to my children. Besides my good name, leave an inheritance. So that's what a lot of this is for. I'm not doing it for me now, just for me now. I'm also doing it, and I'm understanding my role and God's role into this. One of the things that I also want to be able to do is I want to leave something to my church. So that's part of this process. But if I don't have a plan, how can I leave something to the church? If I don't know what I have and I don't establish it to make sure that my family, my heirs are taken care of, how can I be a blessing to the church that was a blessing to me? So, if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me. The microphone now is turned back over to the pastor. Or excuse me, to the chairman. We had to switch roles.
I hope that you have enjoyed Mr. Ridley. Have you enjoyed and the information that he provided? I'm hopeful. As he's mentioned, this was not done so that he could get clients, but just as a way of making sure that the Bywood Community Association provides information to the residents of Bywood. For those of you who are just coming in or who have just come in, this was sponsored by the Bywood Community Association. The Bywood Community Association is a community engagement organization that attempts to raise the quality of life of those residents that live in the Bywood section. This is the Bywood section of Upper Darby. And so our goal, our vision, is to raise the quality of life of those that live in Bywood as well as to Upper Darby. And this is just one of the ways that we want to do that. I could not close without, I'm going to put this young man on my board because I'm getting ready to introduce the board members and he just comes up. So would you please, I want to thank Mr. Garcia Wilkins, who's one of our board members, Renee Boyd Shaw, who is one of our board members, Justin Dula, who is one of our board members, Nicolette DeFrank, who is one of our board members, and Judge Chris Maddox, who is one of our board members. And so I'm grateful for all of them being here tonight. I'm grateful for you being here tonight. Please get to Kinji. If you have some questions, he's accessible and gives out the information many times without you even having to pay for it. So please don't, however, he is not, as I say to the church all the time, he ain't a hookup. All right? So he does this for a living, but he certainly is willing to share whatever information he has. As you saw that tonight, this was free. It wasn't, you didn't have to pay for it. And I hope that you leave here tonight, as I say all the time, differently than the way you arrived. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, Kinji. Thank you.